Hello, this is Liberty, and I'm here with my colleague Brandon, and we are going to discuss Nunan's Syllabus Design 1988. First, let's just introduce ourselves. So I am an EFL teacher, now Director of Studies in Bangkok, and I have an MA in Applied Linguistics and English Language Teaching and Delta.
And I'm Brandon Hamrick. I am also an EFL teacher and a recent CELTA graduate from IH Bangkok here in Bangkok.
Okay, and the first and most important question of this podcast, Brandon, is it syllabuses or syllabi?
According to Nunan, it will be syllabuses, although from my understanding, there's a number of different dictionary disagreements there, but I think for this conversation, we'll be using syllabuses.
Yeah, so the Cambridge English Dictionary says syllabuses. Oxford English Dictionary says that you can use either syllabuses or syllabi. And the Fowler Dictionary of Modern English Usage, first edition, syllabi. But logically, so for example, status, you wouldn't say stati.
Right.
And a focus, you wouldn't say foci.
Yeah, no, that would not go over well. So
syllabuses it is.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think so we are both involved in course design to differing degrees. So I've just had a day of talking to teachers about our course outlines, and a lot of it's a topic which doesn't seem to be theoretical. It seems to be just a practical question of what topic makes most sense to focus on in this week, and how can we relate the last lesson to the following lesson, and then how can we make sure that vocabulary is being recycled and not repeating things. And I think when it comes to planning a course for a student, the challenge is just trying to predict what they'll need. And so very often the plans for individual students, we make a plan, but then it inevitably changes as the student progresses, or they change their mind about what they want to focus on, or we realize that we thought they needed one thing and they need another thing. Yeah, and then that's very different from the structured approach of Delta Module 3, where you start by doing a needs analysis with a group of students, and then everything in the course has to come from the needs analysis and the literature review. So every item in the course is somehow justified by those two things. And so it's interesting to read Nunan because he's discussing different types of syllabus in relation to views of the language. And I think that I read chapter 3. I think you read chapter 2.
Yeah, up through chapter 2, which a lot of the introduction in chapter 1 focuses on breaking down what we would consider the difference between a curriculum, a course, and a syllabus, which was one of the more helpful aspects of reading this for me, because this conversation started because I brought the idea to you of looking at what I described as a curriculum. And I kind of felt that was somewhat like bringing just a wheel to you and asking if you could teach me how to ride a bicycle. Like, it wasn't maybe the best word choice for what I was wanting to work on and improve my teaching ability.
You phrased it in a different way before. You said it was something involving a unicycle.
Well, because that almost feels more advanced, because a curriculum is such a large and broad term, at least how Nunan describes it, as being what we do as English language teachers. That is the curriculum itself. That as a curriculum almost ties closer to subject, but even a little bit more broad than that. And so I changed from a unicycle to a wheel because, I wanted to almost, in asking you if I could design a curriculum, it felt just such a base understanding of what it was I was wanting to do, which was more in line with a syllabus, I think, or I guess a course actually would be more accurate.
So what is the difference between a syllabus and a course?
So to me, I view courses as being made up of a syllabus that shows where along the journey students, and again, this will depend on, I believe what you're going to talk about is the different kinds and styles of syllabuses, but a course is made up of different landmarks for a student, and what exactly those landmarks are is going to be determined on the type of syllabus. And so not the best way of looking at it, but you have kind of almost a funneling of a curriculum down to a course that is structured by a syllabus.
I think I see what you mean. So a syllabus might be less detail than the course would be everything, all of the material and all the activities, and the syllabus would just be what you need to cover in a very basic.
Exactly. Again, and if it's more of a task focused syllabus, then it would, I mean, again, yeah, it would adjust the material and the way in which that course is presented and taught to these students.
Right. And Nunan presents different ideas about what um, different ordering principles of a syllabus. So, like, how do you decide what you'll teach students in what order? And so, okay, question for you as a teacher, because you're the person who has to eventually use the syllabuses that people write and then use the course that's created. And so, question for you is, would you rather work with a syllabus that gives the content that students need to learn, so all of the grammar and vocabulary topics, or would you rather have a syllabus of activities? So on Monday, you do this, a role play about this topic, and then Tuesday, you do this without listing any of the language points.
So we had talked about this in the past, and I think I would actually change my answer from our last conversation about this, because I have found having a more content focused syllabus in showing those grammar points and showing what it is and finding more authentic material to attach to it to be a lot more successful. I enjoy bringing English into the real world, and so it can be almost alluring to have less of a content focused lesson. But yeah, based on our conversations and then the more and more experience I get in teaching, that content, those grammar points and functional language, all of it is almost the fun of the challenge now to kind of build out those tasks, because you can always, I don't want to use the phrase like fall back on, but knowing where the lesson comes from is just a lot more of a comfortable place to work from for me.
What do you mean by where the lesson comes from?
I think that because when we look at more, did you say task-based lessons
Yeah.
as the alternative to content?
Yes. So, for example, from episode 1 of this podcast, Arthur described a task where students had to find a place for Arthur to live. So find a condo for your teacher, or find an apartment for your teacher. And then so that's the activity, and he gave them a list of criteria, and they had to look online for a condo. And then maybe a language point that would be useful for that task is comparatives. And so this is not the term, but on the content syllabus, the topic would be comparative adjectives in the context of finding a place to live, as opposed to do this task with the students.
Yeah, and I think that again, so in that way of looking at more activity-based lessons, there's such a joy in seeing that emergent language that comes from that. And hearing Arthur talk about that was very exciting, and it was really inspiring for me to see that, where I can instantly see where it's like, oh, you hear those comparatives come out or not, and find that as a way to upgrade the student's language. But being a newer teacher, having the more content focused lesson, I feel more comfortable. That's what I mean, where the lesson comes from, because I'm still like stretching and trying to learn how to use that muscle of noticing emergent language. So I feel as though I'm doing the students a better service when it comes from a place of a content based lesson, because I know that walking away from it, I have my gift for them of this today. And if I'm lucky, I can spot and notice the emergent language and use that as a secondary gift with that. And so that's just, again, from my experience, a content-based lesson is something I can feel comfortable knowing I have that initial gift.
Okay. Yes. So you mean, yes, you at least know there's a clear idea of what you can teach the student. Whereas if you just have the activity, then you don't know what they're going to learn. And I guess the worst case scenario is that they do the task and it's really easy, and then you have nothing to say. It's like, oh yeah, you did that perfectly. And maybe they used comparative adjectives, and so you didn't have to correct them. And so then, yeah.
Which I don't find that to be fully like unhelpful of a thing. I mean, obviously practicing all parts of English, I've seen the ways that in which it can benefit students, but um, I'm just still coming from a place where I just feel more comfortable knowing that they can walk away with their again, I keep using a gift as a metaphor, but that's the best I can think of it is
Mm.
like walk away with something in mind.
Mm.
Uh,
But I think that's really valuable. I think having a language item and just having the meta language as well, there's something about that which I do think is very helpful, at least for some types of students
mm,
who maybe who are more analytical, to make it memorable and just to make the meaning clearer. So that makes sense.
mm,
So these two alternatives that I've just presented are examples of product-oriented versus process-oriented syllabuses. So product-oriented, the focus is on the knowledge and the skills that you want the students to learn. And a process-oriented syllabus is focused on the learning experiences themselves. So just on what activities you will get the students to do.
mm,
And so in chapter 3 of Syllabus Design, Nunan goes through different types of product-oriented syllabus. And this is, and again, just to say, the type of syllabus is just telling you the main ordering principle. So if you think of the table of contents in a course book, and you have this sort of matrix of functional language and skills and speaking. So the first column would be the ordering principle. So the first one that he considers is the grammatical syllabus, which is where you choose topics in grammar and order them by complexity. So
mm,
he's got some examples. So starting with copular and adjective combinations, she is happy. And then next lesson, introduce the ing form, she is driving a car. And then the next lesson, introduce existential there is a man standing near the car. And Brandon, when we first talked about this, your reaction to this was really interesting to me, because I think you said something like, "Oh yeah, that's the way you should plan a course."
yeah, it feels very, very fundamental to a course design because when I think about where to take a student, like where their journey goes, again, I really, really appreciated the metaphor you said. It's not about like pouring that information into them, but shining a light and looking for that. I think that is such a good way of putting it. Um, but I do think about it in terms of like in shining the light, there's such benefit to if you can have a rope to follow along, at least you don't know what you'll notice in the darkness, but um, that grammatical structure, it feels underneath everything like it's like the core of designing a course of any kind. But I don't know that that's necessarily true based on what we talked about following that.
So yeah, I guess if you take the grammar to be fundamental, then that does lead to problems. So just to go through some of the criticism. So one thing is just the weight that you're giving to grammar as opposed to other parts of language, because arguably language functions and lexis and skills and pronunciation are as fundamental as grammar.
Hmm.
And so a problem with just using grammar is, so for example, if you do any functional language, then there isn't a one-to-one mapping between forms and functions.
Right.
So there was the example of the sentence, the cliffs are over there. And this could have different functions. So it could be giving directions. So the cliffs are over there, go over there. Or it could be a warning. So don't fall. Or it could be a suggestion, maybe like, let's go for a nice walk. And then similarly, a single function might be expressed in different grammatical forms. So a request, can I have, could I have, would it be okay to, may I have, that wine looks interesting, I'm dying for a drink.
Hmm.
And so if there's going to be any focus at all on these other aspects of language, then that will muddy the grammatical waters, as it were. And another point that Nunan brings up is that just the problem with ordering by grammatical complexity. So there's this idea that something that is complex might actually be quite easy to learn, and something that is simple might be quite difficult to learn. And he calls this psycholinguistic difficulty. For example, it takes students a long time to acquire the third person S. This is a very simple topic grammatically because the rule is a simple rule. Add S or ES to present simple third person verbs. Students find it difficult because they have to hold the subject in working memory. So they have to remember if the subject is he, she, it, we, you, they, and is it plural or singular? And is it present or past? Which is it's an interesting point. And I was thinking about this because maybe it's still okay to teach that point at elementary level. And there are lots of examples like that. So possessive adjectives and pronouns. So my phone, it's mine, and their phone. We tend to teach all of that together at elementary level, but we wouldn't expect students to use it fluently after the first time they learn it. Singular and plural forms. I think that's another case of it's a simple rule, but then it's hard for students because because it might be alien to them depending on their first language, and two, just like holding in working memory the number, or like, is it a countable noun or an uncountable noun? So I don't know. I think we should still teach these items at elementary level and maybe well before students are ready to acquire them because they can do it. They can understand the point, even if it then takes many months for them to actually incorporate it.
I think absolutely, because I think that those are the, misleadingly easy things for us to understand. But I think that it's some of the most common errors I see in even higher level students where it's almost easy to overlook them because you go, oh, well, that's a simple thing that I know they've learned for so long. But because it is a simple idea that is so complex, when we teach it earlier on, I would like to think and hope when we approach students, we have a hope and desire that this is, at an elementary level, this is the start of a long learning experience. So if it is taught early on, it's going to be either directly or indirectly brought up to them. So it becomes easy because it's been there since so early on. In the same way as like native speakers, it's easy for us maybe because it's been there our whole lives. And so we're kind of starting them with this going, yes, this is going to be something you frequently make a mistake with. But by the time you get to what we hope would be a proficient level or whatever level you will end up being at, that you've had such amount of time to cement it.
And so, so if anything, it's an argument for teaching those items earlier rather than leaving them until later, by which time maybe the error has fossilized and then you're so much in the habit of never using the third person S that And that reminds me of the CPD session where I taught you beginner level Hebrew. And the first thing that you learned was so the difference between you masculine and you feminine, because it's two different words in Hebrew. And that's very unintuitive to English speakers. And when people learn Hebrew, it takes them a long time to, even though you learn it at the beginning, it takes a long time just to use it consistently. But just because it takes a long time to acquire that point, I think it's still right that you learn that at the beginning because it's a very basic point. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's something that you try to get early on so that eventually it doesn't fossilize in the wrong way.
But then one other interesting criticism of the grammatical syllabus is the idea that I'm just going to read. So he says that grammatical grading, so ordering by complexity, quote, could well interfere with language acquisition because it's, quote, more of a global than a linear process, different aspects of grammar developing simultaneously rather than one structure being mastered at a time. So I think maybe this is like when you're doing grammar classes and you teach the student the past simple, and then they only speak in the past simple and they don't use the present simple anymore. So there's a distorting effect of though there can be a distorting effect on the student's output because maybe they're not ready to acquire a certain grammatical structure. But anyway, there is also a lot to say in defense of the grammatical syllabus. So there is we should teach grammar that will help generate. I'm going to just read this. Generate the most powerful generalizations.
Mm.
So, for example, the concepts of person and number, I think those are very helpful, like third person and singular and plural. These are all topics which are hugely helpful for learners in understanding and producing language, whereas a topic which doesn't have the same kind of applicability would be word order with lists of adjectives. So in the phrase, a beautiful old Italian sports car, there's a rule for the order that you put those adjectives in. So opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose, and then the noun. You could teach that, but then it doesn't really apply to it doesn't apply that widely. You wouldn't see that very often. So yeah. And then he talks about functional-notional syllabuses. So this is focusing on so functional would be focusing on communicative purpose, and then notional would be on conceptual meanings. So for functions, it would be things like, he gives examples, identifying, inquiring, denying, agreeing, offering, advising, and then notions are quite abstract. So time, cause, ownership, duration, direction. And so good things about functional-notional syllabuses, it's using real life language and giving a purpose for speaking or for using the language. Another good thing is, so in terms of the way it's structured, it could like the way it's taught, it's like the grammatical syllabus, it's product based, and it would just be a matter of kind of listing the forms and then teaching them in the same way that you would have taught the grammar points. Yeah, but then so for criticisms, it's harder to grade functions and notions. And arguably a lot of it would just be teaching a grammatical syllabus but labeling it differently. So instead of saying we are going to do the past simple, you say the students are going to talk about what they did yesterday. But it's the same thing. So yeah, so really, I mean, this is very similar to a grammatical syllabus. And the thing is, I just think these are just, of course you need both grammar and functional language, and you need a focus on just a topic more generally. You need all of these things. And I don't really see why there needs to be one ordering principle for a course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would definitely agree, because I think that with having solely one be the focus or the other, I mean, it feels like it's missing such a crucial part, because without one or the other or any aspect of it, it would be doing them a disservice.
But yeah, maybe he's just kind of setting this up for the sake of argument, and maybe he's getting to that conclusion that we've just drawn. But then another thing he says that's interesting is, I think he cites someone else saying that dividing language into discrete units of whatever type misrepresents the nature of language as communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that it is a bit, yes, so it is a bit artificial if you're going to a school and learning about the past simple. That is very different from using the language in real life. And so the examples that we've talked about are, just to introduce another term, they are synthetic syllabuses, which means that their approach is to break the language down into manageable chunks, and then to itemize them. And this is in contrast to analytic syllabuses, which focus on experiential rather than linguistic content. I like these terms because our field steals terminology from philosophy. So you've got inductive and deductive approaches to teaching language points, which describes two contrasting methodologies, and it's nothing to do with inductive and deductive in philosophy. And similarly, in philosophy, so analytic knowledge is like or an analytic statement is something which is true by definition, and a synthetic statement would be a statement about the external world. So anyway, that's just a side point. So analytic syllabuses are, for example, some content-based syllabuses. So CLIL, or content language integrated learning, would be analytic. So it just views, so the idea is that the aim is to learn the language, but then you're learning about a different topic, which is in recognition of the fact that language is just a vehicle for talking about other things. So I think the idea is it's like through the experience of learning about international business, the hope is that you would then learn English through that experience. And of course, there are difficulties with this approach. So just to read a quote from the text, the adoption of this approach has had its difficulties. Very often the learner has extensive knowledge in the content domain and is frustrated by what is considered a trivialization of that content. And I remember you agreeing with this. It rings true because people will often come, especially adults, will come to a course with certain expertise. And we are not experts in their field, and then we're trying to teach them about business, which they already know about. So that's that can be quite challenging.
Absolutely. I think business English is a great example for that, as well as any form of specialized English learning. Of course, they have all of that knowledge, and so there has to be some sort of establishing of a foundation that I can't imagine being anything short of being trivial for them.
Yeah. And I think in trying to create more authentic conditions for learning the language, it could have the opposite effect, because the student is someone who has signed up to learn English. So I think we can just teach them English because that's the thing that we're experts in. And that's rather than trying in this insidious way to teach them English by teaching them about business, which they already know all about. So yeah, I'm sure that it works very well in some contexts. And I mean, ESP is, of course, tailoring the language to the student situation is a good idea, but that's not quite the same as just seeing language as a vehicle and then teaching them about something else. So then the alternative to the product-oriented syllabus would be a procedural syllabus. So, for example, like a task-based syllabus, and this would be, so instead of a list of grammar points, it would be a list of activities that the students do. I guess this approach would raise a lot of challenges too. Like, how do you know how complex a task is, or how do you grade the difficulty of a task? And I think when we last talked about this, we decided that, so I had an example. In a recent CPD session, students A and B had maps of the same town at different times, and they had to describe the map without looking and find the differences. So that task was done by a group of native speakers, and it wasn't insultingly easy for you. And I think that task could also be done by elementary learners, just with a much lower level of language production, and maybe in the task setup, just using simpler language and pre-teaching simpler vocabulary. And so it seems like many tasks or activities that we would use in the classroom cannot be graded. If you just have the activities, then there is no way of ordering them. So so one solution would be to use graded models of the task. Because even if you can't grade the difficulty of the task, you can grade a model. And so the text of the teachers doing the map description task would be very different from the elementary group in terms of just the complexity of the language that you're using. So yeah, and so I guess where I'm leaving this is just to say that this seems quite promising. And Michael Long wrote a book in 2015. I think that there is a task-based syllabus in that book. So yes, and this book that we're talking about by Nunan is from 1988. And he does refer to Long, but I think the later publication has a more detailed task-based syllabus.
Mm.
I'm a little bit suspicious of this idea that you could just have only tasks in a syllabus, and then maybe in the course there are models, and the models are graded. So how are we grading the models? I think we're doing it by analyzing the language in the models. And that, again, it just comes back to focusing on language items, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. And yeah, like I think that as much as I like open-ended tasks and communicative activities, I think that there is no escape from the usefulness of teaching grammar in a systematic way. And yes, you could just use tasks, and then the teacher just has to observe the students and find something from a grammar book according to what they need. But I don't think that would work as well for example, in our context, because we've got groups of students and a group of elementary level students. And so what do they need? Well, they need they need quite basic things like to revise the days of the week. We know what they need to learn. And yes, they will have preferences and different subjective and objective needs in terms of the exact things that would be best for them to learn. So just to give an example, when I started learning Thai, one of the first things that I really wanted to know was the days of the week. And it literally took a year for me to learn. It just never came up in any of the lessons I was doing. There were several things like that where I thought, oh, I really wish I knew this topic, and it never came up. And I think that probably happens a lot to students on the group courses. And yeah, I think that may just be a reality of doing a group class, that no one is going to have the exact order of things that they want. But that doesn't mean the lesson is not useful for them. It just means that, yeah, like you can't learn everything you need in one day. Sometimes you have to wait a few weeks for the topic to come up, and you might think that you need to learn. Maybe I thought that it would be good for me to learn the days of the week at that point, but maybe it wasn't the best thing. Maybe I needed to learn, I don't know, I needed to expand my vocabulary more so I could say what I was doing on the days of the week. Do you know what I mean? So I might think that I need something, but then it might not actually be the best time for me to learn it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think with language acquisition, there's, that feels like an entire conversation around, wants versus needs. But yeah, in learning Thai, there are words and phrases where when I eventually had them come up in my lessons, I was like, oh, I can't believe it's been a year. Like, and now we're doing, I think months actually was for me, where I was like, oh yeah, months. And yeah, I think that would have been something if I was really trying to like self-teach myself, that would be something maybe early on, but that would have been a want over maybe the need. And I think when we have these group classes, we're especially focusing on the need of really learning a language.
With months, I thought that I wanted to learn the months in Thai, and when I learned them, I thought, oh, okay.
Yes.
And now I cannot remember that.
From that, I can't for the life of me. I was thinking, very nervous. I thought you were going to quiz me on the months ago. I was like, I can't. Not right now.
Yeah. Mok gara kon, and it's very hard. So, but yeah, so that's actually a really interesting example, because I really thought, oh, I really need to learn the months so that I can talk about my plans and what I've done. And then once I tried to learn them, I thought, okay, well, actually, it's easier just to say 3 months ago, or in 2 months, or this month, or next month. And I never used the names of the months.
No.
So, yeah. So there you go. Okay, well, we have both got to go.
Yes.
So thank you for this discussion. It's really a pleasure to talk to you about it. It's really interesting to hear your perspective as a teacher who has to work with the courses that we write. Yeah, I feel like we've kind of only scratched the surface of this topic.
Very much so. No, I'm excited to read more of this. And it is also, yeah, it's been great talking with you about this. It's very, very helpful because I think too, even if I wasn't looking at helping in kind of structure these courses, knowing the ideas that go into them does nothing but like expand. Anytime now I'm getting an outline or anything like that, I can look at it more than just a list of tasks or a list of this is what we have to do today. It's a much less of a daunting series of bullet points and much more of a conversation with what exactly we're uh, what exactly we're doing here.
Hmm, cool. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and see you next time.